Warm bodies. Near future, zombies have taken over large sections of the city, which is now divided by a Berlin-like wall. The zombies are divided into two groups. There are those who are completely dead, which are the bonies, from whom all the flesh has fallen, and they exist simply as eating machines, much like the shark in Jaws, which, as we know, isn't about a shark. On the other hand, you have the slightly less dead. The dead, but still vaguely remembering somewhere on some genetic level the fact that they were once humans. Our centre character, Nicholas Hoult, here is a clip.
What am I doing with my life? I'm so pale. I should get out more. I should eat better. My posture is terrible. I should stand up straighter. People would respect me more if I stood up straighter. What's wrong with me? I just want to connect. Why can't I connect with people? Oh, right. It's because I'm dead. I shouldn't be so hard on myself. I mean, we're all dead. This girl's dead. That guy's dead. That guy in the corner is definitely dead. These guys look awful. I wish I could introduce myself, but I don't remember my name anymore. I mean, I think it started with an R, but that's all I have left. I can't remember my name, or my parents, or my job, although my hoodie would suggest I was unemployed.
Very early on, he sets eyes upon Julie, played by Teresa Palmer, so he's R. Oranges. So we had a whole kind of Romeo and Juliet thing, which is sort of being played out in the background.
I see.
He sets eyes on her after having eaten her boyfriend's brains, and in doing that,
It's an everyday story.
It is. It's something. Who can say that hasn't happened to them? And after eating the boyfriend's brains, he gets some of the boyfriend's memories, which sort of encourage him to fall in love. Although, of course, he's a zombie, he can't fall in love because he doesn't have a pulse. And yet, the central thrust of the story is that as he falls in love, his heart is set not only a flutter, but a beating. And the suggestion, therefore, is that love really does change everything. So essentially, it's a zombie love story. When Nicholas Hoult was on the Graham Norton show, Graham Norton said this thing about, well, it's a rom-zom-com. And then he looked and then he said, I made that up myself. To which the answer is, no, you didn't, Graham. That is a joke that was coined for Shaun of the Dead many years ago. In fact, I remember very clearly Bill Nighy coming on the programme and saying it's the world's first rom-zom-com, and me saying at the time, actually, that's not true, because Return of the Living Dead Part 3, although it didn't use the phrase rom-zom-com, was a romantic comedy zombie movie. And then, of course, you could, to some extent, go back to Romeo and Juliet. So it ain't new, and that phrase, which we are being told has been newly minted for the film, isn't new at all. And again, sorry to raise Shaun of the Dead, but if you're going to use the phrase rom-zom-com, then you are raising Shaun of the Dead. Nothing you can do about it. The interesting thing about Warm Bodies is that it suffers, on the one hand, from a fundamental problem in terms of zombie mythology, which is that it can't quite figure out its own zombie lore in terms of what they can do, what they can't do, in terms of their regeneration, in terms of whether they're dead or not. It sort of fudges that. But it kind of doesn't matter, because it's really not interested in that. What it is interested in is a sort of young teen romance between a girl and an undead creature who is very handsome on some level. And so this is clearly playing, to a large extent, to the Twilight audience, and no problem with that. That's a very, very, very large audience. Twilight has now gone. Obviously, they need something to fill the gap. There's also, in the background of all of this, I mean, the poster says Zombieland meets 500 Days of Summer. You have to look back at, the sort of mash-up success of Pride and Prejudice and Zombies, which at some point is going to come to the screen. I mean, obviously exists in print, but they keep talking about doing the film adaptation of it. And what you have, therefore, is something which doesn't really work as a zombie movie, but kind of is a stopgap in terms of the post-Twilight market, and ironically has at the centre of it, for all the flaws of the film, a relationship which I believe in more than the central relationship which I don't believe in I Give It a Year. I mean, the film is terribly flawed and is terribly lightweight and is terribly kind of, obviously all its rough edges are taken off because it wants to court the largest possible audience. So it doesn't hold up as a zombie film. In fact, I mean, people are very sneery about Twilight, but Twilight does obey the rules of its own vampire mythology much more closely. This isn't the first rom-zom-com by any means. There have been millions of them, nor is it one that properly understands what to do with the zombie elements of it. But it has, I mean, it's directed by the same guy who did 50/50, and it has a kind of slightly quirky indie alt-goth sensibility, which is kind of fun. And there's a nice thing going on in the central relationship between the two characters who were both kind of misfits. One of them particularly a misfit because, as we heard from that, he's dead and yet he wants to feel normal again. And so if you just take it as an oddball boy meets girl, Romeo and Juliet, across the barricades love story, it kind of works on that level. It doesn't work as a zombie film, but it's not really interested in working as a zombie film. It's kind of interested as working as an old goth romance for the teen audience, which just is trying to find a device which isn't vampires, so that it isn't quite Twilight.